This morning I will call the meeting of Tuesday, August 4, 2026 to order at 9:30. First we'll start out with prayer. Would you please bow your heads? Lord, you thank you that we can come here today to do the work of the county. We thank you we have a privilege for an election day, that we have the privilege to go to the polls and choose who we see fit. Lord, be with the clerk, Justin Robach, and the staff and all the election workers. Give them the grace and the guidance they need. Be with us as we go through the budget planning. Help the people that present the budgets to give us clarity that we may make wise decisions to run this county for our constituents. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
All right, for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Berry.
Here.
Mr. Jortsma.
Here.
Mr. Zylstra.
Here.
Monoma. Mr. Moss.
Here.
Mrs. Wenzel.
Here.
Mr. Teeples. Mrs. Rhodey. Mr. Kyers.
Here.
Kruger. And Mrs. Miedema. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Correspondence, I have none. Do you have any?
None from us.
Moving on to public comment. Public comment in here. Is any online? Super. Approval of agenda.
So moved.
Or
All in favor, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same, motion carried. Consent resolution. Suggested motion is to approve the consent resolution as presented.
so moved.
Support.
Motion made and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same, motion carried. Meeting minutes. And the suggested motion is to approve the minutes of July 28, 2026 Board of Commissioners meeting.
I think that's covered under consent, technically.
I'm sorry, you're right. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Then we move on to agenda and action requirements. Fiscal years 2027 through 2032 capital improvement plan.
Kick it off. You want me to kick it off? All right. Well, good morning,
Get a
everyone.
motion for that, do we, Justin?
Yeah.
No, that's all. Okay.
Yeah.
All good. Excited to present the budget. This is the first step in the formal step that the board has in terms of the budget review and approval process. As I did last week, I just want to acknowledge and thank the staff. There was a lot of hours put into the work that you're going to see today, and a lot of diligence in trying to present a budget that's prudent and fits the goals of the county board. We will have a opportunity to discuss the timeline at the end. There'll be plenty of time for questions, not only today, but going forward. Today's purpose is really to present the board as you begin to really dive into it over the weeks ahead. And we're excited to do that. So there's two parts of this. We're going to be first starting with the capital improvement plan, which will be presented by David. And then we'll move into the budget itself, which Karen and I will work on together. So does that sound good? All right, David, you're up.
I'm going to start with some introductory slides.
Thank you.
So as Patrick mentioned, we were going to talk about the capital improvement plan. We're going to talk about the process a little bit, and then we're going to get into some specific accomplishments and projects that are part of the capital improvement plan, and then next steps specific to the CIP and how it folds into the actual budget. As far as the team that put together the process this year, the Patrick Waterman, Brian Doucette, David Cripps, and I worked together on the capital plan, and you'll be hearing from several of us throughout this presentation. This is a change from prior years, and it is actually a change from our policy that we're going to be updating as we move through this process. We talked last year when I presented the CIP that we wanted to make some changes to this process and be more strategic in our approach. What I've noticed over the course of time, since we first started doing a CIP, is that there's a link between that elected office and the county administration. So this is how things, when the administration is involved, it's really that key link between the elected offices and the administration. So having that office really actively involved really aligns us and is very helpful in this process. So the capital improvement plan, what is it? So the capital improvement plan is Ottawa County's 6-year strategic roadmap for identifying, prioritizing, and funding essential physical infrastructure, facilities, and high-value capital assets. Acting as a bridge between long-range facility master planning and annual capital allocation, the CIP establishes a predictable capital life cycle across all county properties. By evaluating capital conditions, operational risk, and long-term utility, the framework allows the county to address major structural, mechanical, and site infrastructure needs, proactively safeguarding public assets, mitigating high-cost emergency failures, and ensuring transparent fiscal responsible stewardship of taxpayer resources. So our CIP really starts with the 27 appropriations, which will be part of the budget process, and then 5 additional years of planning.
I should ask, does everyone have a copy of the slides as you're following along? Okay, well, I can pass those out if you don't. Thank you.
Okay, so this slide shows a history of our capital spending since inception. So we started our first CIP in 2015. And then obviously we've been building and doing capital planning for much longer, but this is really since we started our capital CIP process. It obviously fluctuates year to year. Capital budgets are adopted, capital CIP projects are adopted on a life to date. So the projects roll, frequently taking longer than 1 year. The time to plan, fund, design, and execute requires stability and consistency. You know, in what we experienced in 22 to 25 was a growing backlog of projects funded that were not completed. So for example, in 2022, we rolled $500,000 of projects, increased to 2.9 million, and then in 6.3 million until in 2025, we rolled almost $13 million of projects. So David Cripps has been working through that backlog. So that was like the first thing we needed to address in this roll forward and this moving forward into this new process. So we had this backlog of projects. Additionally, at the same time, we had new projects that needed to be completed that were identified, or buildings and infrastructure that, as we looked around, that needed to be needed funding. So slide 6, this is taking a look at our general fund unassigned fund balance. And I've heard this being discussed, fund balance, net position at board meetings. And so I wanted to take a minute and talk about that here. Fund balance is a measurement of current resources. And there is so if you this slide, I'm just going to step back for a minute, but that is audited expenditures, that light blue bar. The dark blue one is audited revenue. So that is both expenditures and transfers. And the dark blue one is also includes transfers in. So it's transfers out and transfers in. So that's a little bit more than just straight expenditures. 22 through 23 and 24 might look a little odd. Those were years that we had the ARPA dollars. So there was there was a category in those grants that was revenue replacement, whereas we had the county had revenue replacement, so there was a point where we were able to submit expenses from the general fund and have budgetary savings. Those budgetary savings were, in fact, those savings were what the board invested in those board initiative projects. So those budgetary savings were then transferred. So 22, 23, and 24 were very odd years in the general fund. So the expenses dropped in 22 because we had budgetary savings. In 23, we had budgetary savings, but then we also transferred them to the board initiatives fund. And then in 24, we were spending them and transferring them. So if you kind of look at 22, kind of look at those expenses between 2020 to 2025, that light blue line, and kind of follow that trend, that's really a much more natural curve, because in 22 it was completely normal. 25, we have returned to normal. 22, 23, and 24 are very odd years. And if somebody really wants to relive 22, 23, and 24, I would be very happy to walk through those very odd sequencing of what happened there. But
What's important on this slide too, from a takeaway standpoint, is those two lines are separating at that point. And we talked about the fund reserves being built up. And the reason that we're putting it in this presentation, we're going to talk more about it in the budget presentation as well, but in the CIP, it's important because that is a representation of the backlog of work that wasn't getting done, and those dollars that were allocated weren't being spent. And that caused our fund balance to continue to grow. We want those lines to be close to each other going forward, and we'll talk about that more.
so those dollars are committed. So those dollars, we're rolling them and they're committed. So they are. This is also budgetary savings in the general fund. So what was happening is we had vacant positions in the general fund. So there were savings in the general fund beyond the savings that were being transferred to the board initiative funds. So this was, the general fund has a policy that we're going to maintain a 25% of expenditures in our fund balance. That is what we would call the maximum allowable per policy. So that the unassigned fund balance being the green line, the maximum being the blue line, we're over that. That amount is the there's about $13.3 million there that we would like to, that we have in excess of policy. So as we talk about what that is, and when I've heard conversations happening at the board level, this is current resources. So as we look and we have projects on the horizon that we need to have funding for, we'd like to bring a item to the board to request to bring this within policy to fund both $800,000 towards the board strategic plan to fund some master planning initiatives as part of the strategic plan. And then in addition to that, we'd like to recommend $12.5 million to be funded in the capital projects fund so that we can strategically plan over time to have I'm going to bring up a slide here, to have a consistent funding level in the capital projects fund. So on this slide, what you're seeing is that access, that dark blue line in 2026 is the access general fund that we just talked about. As the light blue in the next column, there's the contribution from the general fund to the capital projects fund. So the one that's stacked shows the two colors show the general fund contribution, and the lighter blue on top would show using the excess from the dark blue to fund the capital projects fund. And as we grow the contribution from the general fund naturally by revenue growth through the tax revenue growth, the excess would go down because we would be using it slowly over time. And then the general fund would slowly grow itself till it be fully funding until in 2033, the general fund would have grown sufficiently to fund the capital projects fund completely on its own at a level of $5 million a year. Therefore, not having to take a full hit to fully fund the capital projects fund
Immediately.
at $5 million a year immediately, because our tax growth in any one year cannot sustain that kind of,
That
we
five,
can't move from 1 million to 5 million in any one year. So it allows us to do it slower in $750,000 increments over time, basically.
So we're looking at the 2034, that the excess fund balance would be enough to support any emergencies that the county could run into and support our AAA bonding. Is that what you're thinking?
yeah, the $5 million a year, this has been worked on for years at the county. In fact, when I was here in 2022, we had come up with, we need about $5 million a year to appropriately fund capital projects. So we're proposing this glide path of using fund reserves now. So we're doing a lower than $5 million general fund contribution early and work our way up to that. So going forward, that line at the 2032 and beyond will look pretty much the same every year. It's a good financial way to get to where we need to be without taking a big hit on the general fund early. We're using the reserves that were intended.
And it's compliant with the general fund balance policy, which talks about excess reserves being used for one-time expenditures, being used for, it lays out exactly what they should be used for and not being, you wouldn't use it to start a new program, or you wouldn't use it, you use it to pay down debt, or you'd use it for, and this is a very prudent, good use for the excess fund balance. I mean, it's consistent with similar things that we've done in the past.
So the proposal that Karen mentioned is to take the 13.3 million that's currently in
13.
general fund, transfer it into the capital improvement fund. It now becomes capital improvement fund reserves. And that's years 27 beyond is where you see the dark line represented.
All makes
Actually,
sense.
Yeah, actually, it would be 12 and a half here, and because of the strategic planning, it would be 800,000 to a new fund we've created, which we'll talk about in the budget, but 800,000 would go there.
I just have a question. I think I understand where you're going with this, and I really like the concept here. I just have a question. How do you respond to the surprises in inflation or one-off events that might kind of affect what the schedule would be on capital projects?
So every year, as part of the process that we did this year, we'll reevaluate all of the projects in the hopper. And again, the capital improvement plan is a plan. It can be changed, it can be modified depending on the conditions, depending on things that come up as new priorities. But what's important is the process is consistent and that we have the ability and flexibility to change and modify as we need to.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so also as part of our capital projects fund, we're going to highlight some projects. I'm going to start with just a few parks projects and really mostly, and then I'm going to hand it off to David, mostly only to cover the fact that Parks has their own planning process, which I know the board is very familiar with, but we do a a one county CIP. They have their own project and then their own process. They run it through their commission. And then in the end, we consolidate our CIPs together. We consolidate the funds together. We have two funds on our general ledger and then consolidate them. We keep them separate just because the millage is restricted and we want to make sure no funds are commingled and then consolidate everything together for reporting purposes. But they did have a few very nice highlights with the Gross Park renovation of the playground and the nice beach stairway overlooking deck at the Dune Boardwalk. So, you never can go wrong with showing a few parks pictures. So in a presentation, so just, and then to cover those highlights about how that is one CIP. So if you look at your document, you will see some parks. And if you have questions, I would need to invite them to a work session to involve them in the process. And now I would hand it off to David Cripps to talk about the highlights for the county projects.
Right. Good morning. I'm
Morning.
here to talk about what we've done last year and upcoming projects. So first thing, we closed out the Family Justice Center construction project. It is done. Thank you.
Okay, next.
Next. Done. You can see here, you've all noticed it, I'm sure, we recovered the walls here, painted the downstairs, updated all the wayfinding in this building. We also right-sized 4 departments inside this building, moving water resources, MSU, equalization, and that made room to put veterans in the lower level of this building. Construction has started on that project. Not pictured as I'll go through a list of projects we have completed later. Not pictured as we've repaved a lot of parking lots this last year. Planning work has been completed on the Grand Haven Courthouse renovations. That is going to essentially double the size of the prosecuting attorney's office, move the friend of the court from the 2nd floor to the lower level. District Court probation will move to the 1st floor, and District Court will be renovated. Designs are completed on that, and bidding will go out to the street next month, or this month, September. Not in your packet, I have a list of projects that have, so as Karen stated, when I got here, there was about $13 million in backlog projects. So last year I've spent kickstarting all those, and we have done a lot of work. So we have completed paving upgrade to the jail, Grand Haven Courthouse pavement, Holland District Court air handling units, Sheriff's Record area remodel, James Street A building facade, Fillmore C wing pavement, cooling tower replacement at James Street A and B building, selected fire panels and fire panel replacements, probate court Grand Haven Courthouse relocation, recaulked the Grand Haven Courthouse, replaced the carpet in the Grand Haven Courthouse, pavement upgrades at James Street campus, replaced broken sidewalks at James Street campus, re-wallpapered this building, replaced gym floors at JJI and Juvie, and remodeled the Treasury Department downstairs. Those are all completed in the last year, or this year. Under construction is exterior signage and veteran services relocation. And design/contracting is the building automation replacement, ADA upgrades at Hudsonville, ADA upgrades at James Street A, ADA upgrades at James Street C, Grand Haven Courthouse alterations, countywide exterior door replacements, James Street Building C clinic remodel, and equalization relocation. We've been busy.
Quick
Then-
question.
what? Go ahead.
How's building automation going? Has it become bigger than you expected? Is it just
It's-
exactly what you expected?
It's exactly what I expected. It's a very large project. We've contracted with Fishbeck to help us do design services and help us draft an RFQ to get a selected contractor. That's where we sit right now.
Is it more than HVAC? Is it
Yes.
everything?
Yep.
Lighting, et cetera?
Lighting, generator statuses, electrical feed, lift stations, sewage pump. Yeah. Lot bigger than just HVAC.
Cool.
Where are we at here? So a few projects highlighted for the 27 fiscal year. The roof on this building needs replaced. It is original from 1994, so it's way past its useful life. Office conversion and modernization. 2 office suites in this building will be renovated. We'll continue on with modernizing countywide elevators. And then selective work in the jail. That would be showers and flooring. Showers are failing, tiles falling off the walls. They're, as you can see here, that's what one of them looks like. And then the state of Michigan has identified all the carpeting in the jail need to be replaced. And that's just a few of the highlighted projects. You'll see in your packet the whole list of projects for 27. And then as part of the board strategic plan, we plan to undergo a space planning assessment and a facility condition assessment. And that will build our master plan for the next 20 years, a roadmap to maintenance and expansion of buildings or new buildings. That gives me a picture of where we sit today with our current, what we have, and builds a roadmap for the future.
Is that the funding that Karen mentioned?
Yes, that's the 800,000.
That's important too, from the standpoint, David's previous slide talked about high priority repairs in the jails. So there were a lot of projects that were planned for the jail that we're gonna basically put a pause on. We're just doing the critical projects in this year with the idea that this space planning assessment will really give us a framework of, are we putting money into this building or are we doing something more significant? So this is kind of a pause year in terms of projects, so we can get a better handle on, and that's why the future CIPs are not very built out at this point, because this space assessment will help determine those future projects.
Is it possible to have some kind of checklist of showing us visually what projects were completed that were projected to be done this past fiscal year, and which ones are moving
Well,
in the future?
uh,
Is there a lot of those that didn't happen that were projected to happen? That were approved in the CIP plan?
there's a handful. I can list them
Be
here. And
great just to hear, and then I would love to hear like some of further elaboration on maybe why they got paused, because I'm sure there's different reasons for.
yeah, so the jail air handling units is paused pending the facility condition assessment. Sheriff's shooting range HVAC downstairs here, that's also paused pending. That would most likely be a throwaway cost to the county if we decide to move that shooting range out of this building. So I wanted to pause there. Courthouse security stations, that's just on hold. I haven't done anything with it yet. We need to make decisions on single point of entry and some security enhancements. Jail interior door scanners, that's also on hold because it's in the jail. Grand Haven Courthouse elevator, I'm bringing on a consultant to help us just figure out what we need to do with elevators. So that's on hold. That will happen in 27. All of the elevator projects that were funded in 26 are sliding to 27. That would be Holland Courthouse elevator and one of the elevators in this building. And then a couple of the projects are not like implement building strategic plan. That's just a holding fund. And that's the only ones that are not have anything done with them yet.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. And as Patrick said, you can see 28, 29, 30 are not super built out. Prior to me arriving, there was almost no plan. So I've built 27, there's some projects in 28, and the facility condition assessment, master planning will really drive 28 forward. And you can see here, where am I at? I'm sorry. But we have identified a few projects for 28 and beyond. This campus needs something done to its electrical service, either backup generators or a secondary primary service brought in. So 28 would fund, or 27 will fund a some design work to get a scope. In 27, we'll start a conference room modernization program in this building. 2028, this room will be renovated, and that would include upgrading the technology, finishes. And we heard, or I heard, Patrick heard, that you guys wanted more meetings to be able to be streamed. So we'll be upgrading all the technology so that will allow for that. This room has not been renovated since the 90s. So, and then Holland District Court roof replacement in 29. And then some strategic work done at the JJI building, building B at James Street.
Question on that, David, the audio upgrading, will that be in more rooms too? Because we had that problem once before, we moved from room to room that we had.
Yes.
So that is this going to be the whole audio upgrade?
Audio visual upgrades in all of the conference rooms in this building, main conference room down the hall, and this room here.
Perfect, thank you.
So,
The plan would be to do the main conference room first, so
Yep.
that if these meetings need to happen elsewhere during renovation, we'd have a place to go. So that's why this room's not being done till 28.
yep. So main has to be done first, and then we'll do this one.
And I want to emphasize, the generator is a big one. We had a power loss, last month?
Yep.
I think it was. And when we go down, I mean, we are on life support at the jail. The jail's not able to operate their kitchen. It's just not a good situation. So we talked to David, and I think that's something that we want to move up from a priority standpoint. It's going to be a big ticket item, but we're doing the study now to really scope it and see what we need to get this campus fully backed up in a power loss. For some reason, we're like at the end of the line here, and we experience a lot of power loss here, and it's an issue.
Who's the provider?
Consumers, I
Consumers Energy, yes.
think they're our only option
For this campus, yes. And you can see there, and it's slated in 28 as we have a rough cost of $4.5 million to do that work. And that would upgrade all the electrical service and transformers on this campus. So it's something that needs to be done anyway. Then any questions on the?
This is the timeline here as we're reviewing it today. We'll have a work session between now and August 25th, or more than one work session, which we can decide. And then once October 1 hits, David has the funding he needs, assuming it's approved to begin the projects.
One question. This is all very well put together. So thank you, all of you. Is there, and maybe it's a conversation for another time, that'd be fine, but is there it sounds like there's a big question as to what will happen with the jail. I know there's been some conversation around it and some other future facilities needs. You mentioned the 20 years, down the road, this campus won't look exactly like it does now.
Nope.
Do you have any commentary to share? Or
Just, I think you're right, and we're kind of like wondering what the step is. When you're at a point where you need to put significant and reinvestment into a building, you always have to ask, is that the right alternative, or should we be looking at a new building or a different alternative? So that is the pause we're doing this year, is to answer that question, to look at both scenarios and really dive into the needs of the building and the true costs of that.
That sounds like a pretty big priority to me.
It is. Yep.
David, kind of along those lines, I think when you gave your annual report, you mentioned something about one of the buildings on James Street that was so out of ADA compliance and everything. It was just, you're really kind of got a lot of different ideas as possibilities for that.
Yeah, James Street B building, there was a project identified for ADA upgrades. It's not funded enough. I think it's 160,000, and just rough estimates, it would be multi-million to bring it up to ADA. So we're stepping back, and I need to know what the building is worth to know if it's worth doing that work.
Sure.
It's from 1987, so it's 40 years old now. It doesn't have fire suppression. It's all the infrastructure's old. So I really just need to know where it sits and if it's worth investing multi-millions in it or replace.
Which one is B building?
It's the one in the back. It's houses JJI and CMH.
I see. So, and I know we've discussed a project going in behind there too, right? So that would be an interesting conversation if we're looking at changing that.
We've also got the former probate court building where Veteran Services was going to move into on this campus that sits vacant right now. And looking at the future needs of the court with growth, what are we going to do with that building? So the space needs will really help us kind of work some of those things out and then plan accordingly in the CIP for the future.
Just a overall question, is there any projects that were proposed by any departments that really brought a lot of attention as you were working through as your team that did not make it to the CIP that the board should at least be aware of for our consideration?
In terms of newly proposed this year,
Yes, or old that maybe would be worthwhile for our attention to at least have a, obviously, these are the ones that made it through your team, but I'm wondering if there was anything that any departments were really asking for consideration, and I would like to hear a little bit of discussion about perhaps if they were turned down at your level, maybe some things that at least the board is aware of. These are some things that we talked through, and here's the reasons why we gave of that it didn't make it through to the current CIP plan.
aware of any? I am not.
So there's just a couple that were slid to like JJI office expansion was proposed this year or came to us this year.
What is JJ?
JJI, that's Juvenile Justice Institute. That's an office expansion and a secure entrance to that building, equaling 350,000. We slated it in 2029 because 2028 is already packed with I think $8 million of the projects. And then it's also goes back to the facility condition assessment for Building B specifically. I'm not gonna say on record, but I don't think the building is worth multi-million-dollar renovations done to it. It would,
What are the practical, are there any consequences for not pursuing that? I'm not saying I'm
Yep.
in disagreement with your assessment. I'm just wondering, are there any practical issues that they will be facing with not proceeding forward for that?
I can't answer that.
One of the things that I asked David to do this year is when you look at CIPs, it's not just the ability of can we afford them? It's also, do we have the capacity to complete them? So I challenged David to really focus on what you can get done this year because he's managing all of these projects and If next year is anything like this year, it's going to be tough for him.
Yeah.
Some of the decisions on moving things back were just merely from a capacity standpoint.
Yeah,
And I-
completely under. yeah,
And
I
most
get that.
people understood that we talked to about the space needs assessment is it's not a no, it's a, we want to evaluate to see if it still makes sense.
And that was a lot, that was a big part of the conversations we're having at the leadership's meeting with the department heads, is how we're doing and how we're moving forward as far as looking at the needs, from a different perspective.
Great. Was there any others besides that one?
Those are the only two that they all did make it in the plan.
Sure.
So they're plugged into that's the only two that I'm seeing.
Were there any that didn't make it in the plan at all between the next few years that have been discussed and brought forward?
They should have all made it in the plan.
Yeah, and the ones that like David mentioned with the jail related, we kind of, I don't know if we necessarily removed them, but we took them out of consideration until we take the holistic view again.
Yep.
We can revisit that. I mean, the sheriff has talked about an idea for a facility, a training facility, which could incorporate a shooting range, for example. So we want
Yep.
to make sure we're looking at that.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else?
More questions? Thank you, David.
Thank you.
That complete that capital EIP, or move on to the fiscal year 2027 operation budget.
You ready?
Pretty sure I'm not taking that, Karen. I think that's you.
Regina's bringing it up.
This is the
Going backwards.
There you go.
Okay. So moving on to the recommended budget for fiscal year 27. Today, we'll talk about some budget basics and then how we define success from a budgeting perspective. We use estimates every year when we do a budget. We'll go over some of those estimates. And then the recommended 27 budget, highlighting the major changes and then what the next steps are. Some very basic budget. We budget for fund types. It's required by law to pass a budget for the general fund and special revenue funds. But as part of county policy, we have adopted a budget for the capital project fund and the debt service fund. In the funds, the general fund and there's only one in the county. And it is the main operating fund of the county. The most common fund type you'll see is a special revenue fund. And so that is like the Parks Fund or the Child Care Fund. The Health Fund is a special revenue fund, Public Defender Fund. So that's the most common fund type. So in your packet that you were given today, there are what we call fund summaries. So all of those are listed. There's also descriptions of funds. So as you look at those fund descriptions, special revenue funds all start with twos. So we categorize and summarize, and there's descriptions there. It's all outlined in that packet that you're provided today. The capital projects funds, as I mentioned, it's a consolidation of parks and county capital projects. It's what we've just discussed as part of the CIP. And then there is the debt service fund. So that is really a mechanism in which the county makes all of the debt, all of the debt that the county has is paid from the debt service fund. So contributions come from multiple funds, and then all of the payments are made from the debt service fund. If there is there is not a requirement to have a budget for internal service funds, custodial funds, or enterprise funds. So, and the county has not opted to pass a budget for these fund types. There, last year, we have one enterprise fund. It is the delinquent tax fund. All right. And we did have a budget for the delinquent tax fund last year. This year, we are not including that in our budget, and so you'll see that as a change from last year to this year. It will be included in the notes as the amount of funding that is surplus in the delinquent tax fund. It will be as part of the resolution, but is not actually a part of the Appropriations Act. So it is a change in the money. But
The rationale for that, sorry.
it's not required by law. So it is an enterprise fund. It is in the white part. And there's a transfer of that surplus. So it's a transfer out. It was a transfer out to the debt service fund. So I was thinking that maybe it's better for transparency purposes to have it as part of the Appropriations Act. And Doug agreed with me, Doug Van Essen, when we wrote it up. And so, but I think we've rethought that after conversations with Cheryl and revisiting the thought process and just how the state has laid that out. And
So where would residents go to find that fund?
it's, where would you go to find the fund?
Well,
So it is accounted for. It is in our financial statements, and it's
Okay.
not required by law. So it's not like we don't report on it. It is in our financial statements. We do a budget for management purposes. I mean, I have a budget. There's a transfer in the system.
Mhm.
So it's just not part of
We
the.
just see the transfer, we just don't see
Because of
how
the
that transfer is generated.
because the treasurer is a custodian of the fund, is my understanding. So it will be included in the words of the resolution. And we're working through that. I'm working through that with corporate counsel, but it will not be part of the numbers
Okay.
of the actual act. So it will be in the words, but not in the actual
Okay. And
number.
then in the annual report, that's when you'll see the actual fund
Yeah.
activity.
Yeah, and you do see all of these. So in the white, if you you do see internal service funds, custodial funds, and enterprise funds in our financial statements. So if you tied this out, you would see all of those funds in our financial statements in the report.
Karen, I have a question on debt service fund. Is all our debt financed through general obligation bonds, or do we have revenue bonds at all?
All our general obligation.
Okay.
Uh,
It seems like it's all I've seen, but
pension bonds are taxable, but they're taxable general obligation.
I understand. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, so examples of the internal service funds are the IT fund is an internal service fund. The employee health insurance fund would be an internal service fund. Custodial funds are funds that we just pass money through. So a custodial fund might be something like we hold the inmate cash. So while someone's in jail, we're holding, if you have money, we hold that while they're in jail and then we give it back. It's nothing, it's not the county's money. We're just holding that temporarily. So we have to hold an account for that. So that's a custodial fund, a proprietary fund, that enterprise fund at the bottom. The proprietary fund is, we only have one, and it's the delinquent tax revolving fund. The defining success of a budget. So a budget is balanced. A balanced budget is defined as revenues plus reserves equal appropriation. So a planned use of reserved is acceptable, even necessary. So everything doesn't always happen in 1 year. Sometimes it's quite common to hold reserves and then appropriate them in the following year. So it's quite frequent that we use a planned use of reserves, and you'll see that later. All debt and pension payments are funded. So that's we define that as success. And then we're compliant with all our financial policies. And then county programs are funded. So it's actually a policy of the Board of Commissioners to plan for future needs of the county by establishment of prudent financial goals and procedures so that ongoing and emerging needs of the public are met, future needs are adequately planned for, and fiscal integrity and reputation of Ottawa County government are preserved. So that's actually one of the policies of the Board of Commissioners.
The bond rating is affected by that.
Yeah.
Which is why that's on there.
All of these defining success. So if we're meeting all of these, that's really our goal for the AAA bond rating. Okay, in part of the budget process, we make assumptions, and every budget process we do this. This year we're showing them as increasing, decreasing, and no change. So the triangle up is increasing, down is decreasing, and the box is no change. So green, red, yellow. Green is positive, red is negative, and caution. And light green is neutral. There is tax value growth. We estimate that at 6%. That has been fairly consistent with what we have seen in our growth. And so that really is a combination of inflation and growth. So it's a combination of both. The millage rate, we have that as no change and neutral. So I think it's positive with no change, but I couldn't get anybody to say that was positive because they'd say, all I got was neutral.
Yeah, we talked about that one a long time. What shape is that one? What color is that one?
So,
Well, what's important on that one too is that our litmus test on that is our citizen survey that we do every couple years. And we ask the question, do you feel the millage rate you pay is fair for the services you receive? And that has historically come back very positively. So that 3.9 mils, which we'll talk about that more, is seen as a positive in terms of a low millage rate for the services that are received.
okay, the Consumers Price Index is 3.5%. That is really across the budget. So that's not really in any particular area. It might impact some of the contracts, not all. But that is what we were using. Health insurance increase, that was 3% as of January 1 of 27. This is an assumption. I do believe that the estimates that are coming in are higher than that. So we're going to continue to work through that as those rates come in. Personnel costs, those are increasing as well. We just implemented a wage study for a portion of the groups. And there's a number of contracts that will be expiring at 12/31/26 that will be renegotiated. So we showed the full wage study for next year, and then we did some estimates for other increases related to expectations for renegotiating contracts, and then some COLA on January 1. The pension costs did increase as well. So there was, that includes the increase in the bond. So, and then without CMH to help fund the bond costs this year. So with CMH's departure out of the 20, well, I guess we have 3/4 of the year that their staffing is not part of the county budget. So they're $2 million where the bond cost is 100% funded with just without CMH staff to support it. And then about 650 where the CMH staff are still supporting the bond costs. So the pension costs are rising. Our 15% our pension costs increase from last year to this year. So those were definitely on the rise. So that's why that's a red arrow up. Our fees and interest are showing as a red box of no change because that's a revenue and you'd like to see it, our fee revenue and our interest revenue rising, and they're really holding pretty flat, pretty steady.
Which means they're not keeping pace with inflation. That's why they're red. Same with intergovernmental revenue.
But because we don't pay much interest expense, so that's one we'd rather see go up than down. So solid waste ordinance revenue, that was implemented, so that is part of help funding that program. So that is a green arrow up. The intergovernmental revenue, again, it's no change. That's been pretty flat. We're seeing state shared revenue flat. We're seeing a lot of the grants coming in flatter. So that is a no change, red flat. Again, not keeping pace with inflation. And then capital improvements, we're showing this as a positive increasing just because we are funding some of those needs and we're seeing the ability to fund that and recognizing and planning for that. So we're seeing that as a positive increasing. Debt service payments, we have our 2015 refunding bond. It was comprised of a number of bond issues, and one piece of them, one of those issues was paid off. And so we did see a small decrease in what we pay out for debt service in 27. That in refunding will be paid off in full in the fiscal year, in a couple of fiscal years. So that is getting very close to being paid in full. And then the CMH authority, we showed that as a no change positive, only because the county will continue to pay the local match. We pay that 400, just under $500,000 local match. That's not changing. We are continuing to pay that. It's also positive because we're working through that setup and transition plan. So we're continuing to work with them through that whole process. So at this point, we're showing that as a really no change positive.
I like this slide because it kind of tells the picture for you of what the story is with the budget, what's affecting the budget this year. This isn't everything, but it's kind of the big factor. So from a talking point standpoint, this gives you a kind of a good sense of what's happening, what's driving things. And I just want to touch on a couple more. So the tax bill growth, that's a huge one because we have had years in recessions where you're going to see that as a negative. That dramatically impacts the county's budget. It's our primary funding source. So our ability to do the things that we're doing now are negatively affected in years where we're in a recession. Karen mentioned the pension costs. That's something, that's a big deal, that we have some pension changes coming with the DB, things that are coming up on the schedule that we're gonna wanna have a work session and talk through with this board on, because we're gonna have some decisions. We've got some pension bonds that are gonna be paid off in a couple years, and what are we gonna do with those funds? We've got a portion of the millage right now that's allocated towards paying for pension, so that's just something to put on your radar, that there's a bigger discussion there. And same with the millage rate itself, that expires in 2028. We'll have the discussion on the board. I'm drawing a blank on the name.
Tax allocation.
Tax allocation board. We'll be meeting on that in 27, 28. So there's some just things on the horizon that we want to make you aware of, that we're going to be talking further about.
When do we look at health insurance increase? I mean, we looked at that years back when it was, better to be self-insured than it was when it got so out of control. Is it even close right now, or?
So we're not self-insured. We're a part of the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool, which is a large conglomerate. It was comprised of local governments and schools. And historically, being a member of that pool gives us strength in numbers, and we've seen increases flatlined a lot because of that. So Karen mentioned that they are anticipating a bigger increase, so we're going to look into that and find out what happened. But historically, since joining the pool, it's been very good for the county.
Any other questions? Great.
Okay, so this is the millage rates and assumptions that were included as part of the budget. So as I mentioned, my neutral as of the 3.9 millage rate as part of the county general operating. This is the 3.9, the 12/31/28. So that was what Patrick had alluded to when we, prior to 2018, the voters, we had a fixed allocation and an allocation board. And then that's what we'd like to talk about, because that's when sometime in 27 have a work session about that expiration date of when, after the voters had approved that, so we can talk about the needs surrounding that expiration date. So we wouldn't have to go back to that allocation board and keep this fixed rate. But then this also assumes that CMH millage, big day today, would be approved, and with the parks being the expiration date in 12/31 of 26, that would be a full year out. That's why they are not until, that's why that is showing differently than CMH being next year, because theirs expired last year. Does that make sense? Theirs expired 12/31 of 25. So theirs starts new this year if it passes today. But so the county being the millage that as of 24, the most recent, Ottawa's is one of only 7 counties in Michigan levying less than what they're authorized, the 0.2560. So continuing with that, I have another slide to talk about that a little bit more. But this is what we would be assuming as part of the budget, the rates that we assume when we calculated using our increased taxable values, our estimated 6% increased taxable values, and these millage rates are what we use when we calculated the property taxes. And then taking a look at what that means to residents, this side here, Headley in 1978, I think it was, the legislature with the passage of Headley meant to limit the growth of the taxes. And so to save taxpayers money, this slide really only looks at 2020 through 2026. So that Headley amendment saves taxpayers 19.3 million. And then through that same time, by not levying, the county not levying the full millage, they have saved taxpayers 38.9 million. So, but what you can see on this slide over time, with the rollback, what happens is the Headley is
Pushing down. on the-
pushing down on they're changing places. So the Headley is kind of eating into the
Levied amount.
unlevied amount, and they're switching. So the dark green and the orange are switching places. And so the 3.9 is staying consistent. So that is what basically happens to other millages. If you're at max, it goes into your regular, right? It
So,
goes-
so what is the threshold? Have you calculated it out in a couple years? What year will Headley catch up and start pushing 3.9 even lower?
So
Or
in
will we have to put it
2028,
back on the ballot?
when the general millage expires, we will have a discussion about going back up to the full 3.9. So that'll be the opportunity to make that orange gap bigger again. Because we.
Going back up to
Go to 4.4.
4.4.
Or yes, and so this is a good slide, and this is a slide you guys, I think, can be excited about and almost carry in your pocket with you, because as you talk to residents about our millage rate, that is, as Karen said, we're one of only 7 counties that levies less than what we are allocated to do. And the result of those savings are directly to the taxpayers. So we are outpacing the benefit they receive from Headley by, when I say we, you, by purposefully levying less than what you're allocated. So that's a good trend. It helps us with our AAA bond rating. It's that capacity to levy more without going back to the voters is very rare. So that's really why we wanted to show this to you. If you get discussions about, well, the taxes are too high, yes, but we're actually levying less than what we're approved to do. I think that's a good talking point for you.
And having that capacity, having that orange capacity is a very big plus to the rating agencies.
So as I understand Headley, the goal is to ensure that revenue to the county stays consistent, not taxes to the individual, right? Because we can account for why that number rolled back because more people moved in, the taxable value of the county increased. And so to make sure that the taxes weren't rising too much, they roll back the rate, correct?
Headley, the one, and I'm not really an expert, but one time somebody said to me, Headley is kind of like, you know how proposal A to the individual looks at the individual. Headley is kind of county-wide
Right,
proposal A.
right. So, I guess one of the things I'm considering is if we've looked at what it would look like if we started Headleying ourselves. So we have had 3.9 mills regardless of the year. But if we levied 4.4, people would see a reduction every year because of Headley. You go from 4.4 to 4.35 to 4.3 to 4.25. But because we levy lower, they don't get that benefit. I mean, they get clearly the benefit of Headley, but they would get it either way because we're levying lower.
Mhm.
But because of that difference, the county relative to the individual tax rate is receiving more revenue. Maybe we can take it offline.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm making sense.
You would say that you would reduce the 3.9 by the same amount that Headley is pushing it down every year? Even
Right.
though we have a gap between the two,
Right.
that would be the idea. Well, I think that's a bigger picture discussion about the county's ability to do that with the obligations that we have, and pension plays into that largely. And that's where I wanted to talk about.
Right, so I guess maybe this is a better way to understand it. Because in 2020, we were essentially taking a $6 million hit. Because that's essentially what we were giving back to the taxpayers.
Mhm.
But in 2026, we're only taking a $4.8 million hit. So essentially you could consider that $1.2 million as revenue. Because that's savings. Because we're taking less of a hit because of Headley.
Yeah, but we're taking a hit because we're not levying the full 4 point.
Sure,
So-
but we account for that currently.
Yeah,
I see your point.
okay.
That's all I'm wondering about. And assuming that the last couple of years of our millage cycle are better for us because we get less of a hit to our revenue.
It doesn't actually hit the revenue, it doesn't actually change it though, right? Because isn't the revenue probably going up each year?
It does.
So actually, we're bringing in more money from the county perspective because the 3.9 continues to grow as the
Right.
taxable base increases.
Right, that's my point. The further along we get in a millage cycle, the more money we make, whereas
Yeah.
most counties have the opposite because Headley
Oh, it's
is pushing
hitting
down their rate.
Mhm, mhm.
That's-
So it's a win in two ways. Is
Yeah.
that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I guess I'm saying, what if we what if we gave back that 1.2 million? So we had a consistent hit every single year of 6 million.
Well, and that's where, when we go back to the dashboard, we're seeing that increasing taxable value, but we're seeing either flatlining or increasing costs or flatlining revenues. So our struggle is to keep pace with inflation. Our struggle is to continue to do the things that we're doing, pay for the things that we're paying for, within our ability to do that. And we rely on that taxable value growth to do it. So I would guess counter that we are not only living within our means, but below our means because of this decision to levy less.
Certainly.
But it's a philosophical discussion that comes out of can we do it? Is it practical for the county to do that? And that's a different question.
Sure. And I'm not trying to suggest
Yeah.
we're spending money wantonly at all. I'm just trying to understand.
So the pressure is then top and bottom. It's kind of like continuing to, have to be balanced as as the years go on.
Right. Yeah, because we don't want to grow fund reserves. We know that. We want our fund reserves to be there if we need them. And that's happened, but there's a reason why it's happened. We talked about that in the capital plan. If we're in a situation, we're just growing.
The thing I do like about how we do it, because we don't have the Headley pressure, is that when other counties go for millage renewals, it's like Christmas morning for them because they go from 4.0 to 4.4.
Right.
And now they're flush with cash, right? Because they get to jump back up 4.4 mils, whereas even if we jump back up to 4.4 mils, assumedly are still only going to
Right.
charge 3.9, so it doesn't make a difference.
Exactly.
Oh, so this forces better planning, like it or not, right? It forces better planning on our part. And I don't just mean, I mean, like higher quality planning, long-term.
Mhm.
I can imagine if you jump to 4.4 and you have an influx of cash, you probably hadn't planned for that. And so somebody's going to be really happy to spend that money.
Exactly.
How many kids are at 4.4? Do we?
I don't know.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Be interested to know when, yeah.
Sure that's available information. Yeah.
Mhm.
All the L429s are out there.
Good. Well, we can laminate this slide for you if you want to put it in your back pocket. So.
Okay, so on, let's see, on this side, we have did I skip one? Okay, so the um, total county budget. So as it plays out it's broken out into the four different categories: the general fund, special revenue fund, debt service fund, and capital projects. But it has moved from 305 million to 243 million. The largest portion of that change, and we'll talk about a little bit more detail later, is the change of the CMH becoming an authority, obviously. 305 million, the 20% decrease is substantially because of CMH is the biggest portion of that change, but you can just see the dark green there is the largest. The general fund is still going up a little bit there at the bottom. And then the dark green is the CMH was a special revenue fund. So that is the largest drop
That's Medicaid dollars.
in Medicaid dollars.
Yeah.
This is probably a little easier way to look at it. It's how your appropriations will look. It's showing the general fund, it's the revenues plus reserves equals appropriations. So the general fund plus the use of reserves will equal appropriations. So, and then this year we added fiscal year 26 appropriations. So you'll have the change there between 27 and 26. So, and the same is true with special revenue and debt service, capital projects. And then, as I said, delinquent tax fund is at the bottom and not included in the actual dollars this year. So the 305 of 2026 compared to 2027. So the general fund, the use of reserves, I just want to touch on that number for a minute because I talked in the very beginning about how it's common to use, or in the special revenue funds, to give back sometimes, depending on which way it's going, reserves. So in the general fund, we have commonly had a reserve of department underspend. So to try to end the year closer to where we want, we use a $2 million reserve because it's hard for departments to end exactly where they want to. They have vacancies. It's hard to spend every dime. So we have a $2 million underspend in the general fund. And then this year we are using reserves. There is a number, I wonder if I have I meant to write them down, but there's a contract funded for the water testing from Conservation District that was funded with Monsanto funds. And then there was a number of things that were funds that were set aside from prior years that were funding this year with Monsanto staffing. So there were planned uses of funds that the board had set aside previously that we're just doing this year. So there's so 2 million must be like 1.7. So the difference between the 3.7 and the 3.7 and the 2 million. So $1.7 million of planned resources that were already there in the fund balance that we're spending this year that the board has set aside from previous years. So that's the makeup of that we're spending this year as part of the budget. And so the difference between the use of, so this explanations is on page 15 and 16. So if you want to know the difference between the 138 million in the general fund this year and the 127 million from last year. So that's the 10.6 million. So if you want to, that is really 5 million of that is really growth in wages and benefits. And then the There's another 1.5 million in contractual services. And then there's 1.5 million in rent. So that is the Family Justice Center. So we pay the building authority rent, and the building authority pays the bond payment for the Family Justice Center. And so that's a increase in the rent payment that we're paying the building authority so that they can pay the bond payment for the Family Justice Center, the bond payments for that. And then
Page was that on again, Karen, you said?
there's explanations for that on page 15 and 16 of your book. So the general fund is completely detailed out on page 15 and 16.
15 and 16?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
You can look at that explanations in there. And then transfers also increased, so that is completely explained. There's a large decrease in special revenue funds, a $67 million decrease in special revenue funds. So that is exactly equal. The decrease is exactly equal to the decrease of CMH, except for then there was obviously some other funds that went up and down. So I'd say the biggest other changes other than that were we've added a strategic planning fund. So that's new this year under the board. So similar to board initiatives. So you had a board initiatives fund where the board did special projects. We've added a strategic planning fund where under the board, there's going to be projects that really are assigned to departments. And so we can track those projects and status. And that's a $1.6 million of initiatives for strategic planning. And then there's another increase in the sheriff's contracts fund. So the sheriff has contracts where all of that community policing. So where there's contracts there, there's $1 million increase there. There's the farmland preservation where we're preserving those farms. They roll over year to year. Well, there's a number of farms rolling over because they never get done in 1 year. And then they're adding 2 more. So that's about $1 million increase in that fund. And then there's a DBDC conversion fund that we are capturing that 0.3 mils to help fund the unfunded pension. And there's about a $2.5 million increase in that fund. So there's some other changes in the special revenue funds in addition to CMH. The debt service funds are decreasing. I've already mentioned that. And then the capital project funds, Parks had some funded in last year, and this year there really aren't any projects funded. I think they're waiting until to see what happens with the ballots. And then the delinquent tax fund is going away. So that's really the change between the $305 million budget last year and the $243 million budget this year. Very high level. If you wanted to look at your budget by function, again, you can see the largest change here because the top dark green line is the current year. The light green line is last year. So the largest change in this would be health and welfare, which is CMH. So that dramatically shifted. So now public safety, I would say,
They're
is
number one.
number one, rightfully where they belong. But
Don't say that to Eric.
where does the money come from? So this slide has also changed pretty dramatically. We with the change in CMH, in previous years, the highest, the general fund really has not changed that much. General fund is pretty consistent with prior years, but the county-wide, we are significantly more reliant on taxes, being number one at 41%. In prior years, it was intergovernmental revenue was our highest at 45%. Now it's only 25% intergovernmental revenue. Last year, taxes would have only been 32%. So countywide, taxes would have been 32% in the past. Charges for services was 10%, now it's 15%. And all other revenue was 13%, now it's 19%. So the countywide picture has really changed over from last year to this year. So that was, these slides really, for many years, wouldn't change, but with a big change like CMH, they really took a different view this year. And then personnel requests. So this is a view trying to take a look at the personnel requests over time. So we had 33 personnel requests this year and 12 were approved. And then we deauthorized 3 in the past. So last year, by way of example, we had 43 requests. We approved 37. 25. We had 83 requests and approved 22. So we didn't ever really report on deauthorizations in the past. It wasn't something we really tracked. So that -3 is
It's noteworthy.
probably, I don't really have a history of that. So I think we'd probably just start tracking that from a go forward basis.
What's important to note here too is the personnel requests does not necessarily mean one FTE. It can be a portion of an FTE. It can be a change in allocation, a funding source. It's just the number of requests is what we're tracking, just to give you a perspective of the amount of changes that were asked. So that's how we're tracking it. And as Karen noted, we will begin tracking and reporting on the personnel deauthorized, because I think that's important to put into perspective with these requests, that it's common that the county will, through its position control, determine that a position is no longer needed, will remove it from as a funded position, which helps balance new positions coming on.
Sometimes it sat there for a long time, didn't it?
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, is this, the ones that are in black, are them new positions or are they just reauthorized positions or a different grade? How does?
The 12 that were authorized,
Mhm.
it's a combination of new positions and reallocation of existing positions.
Do we want to separate that or is, I mean,
They're
from my
both-
information, it don't make, well,
Yeah.
it does make a difference.
Did they get this in their
Yeah,
packet?
yeah, it's on page 10. You can see the new positions.
Page 10 in the big pamphlet?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Just some of the rationale behind the decisions, because that may be a question. We looked at each position carefully. I did have some directives from the board to say, hey, anything we can do to curb growth line this year would be appreciated. I sent out letters to all of the department heads that requested positions, indicating some of the factors that were used in the rationale as to why they were denied. Just to give you a sense of some of those, the significant financial impacts of the 2026 wage and classification study, the unknown yet to be determined fiscal impacts of the bargain wages for all collective bargaining units, a flatlining of state shared revenue causing inflationary costs to outpace revenues, the loss of cost allocation revenue from the spinoff of CMH, a recommitment of general funds to address negative impacts of years of deferred capital projects, and a projected increase in the deferred pension obligation costs. So those were some of the factors and why. I also asked departments to prioritize all of their requests for me, which was new this year. So I used that as kind of guidance of, the ones that were critical were approved. And it would, I think overall, I only had 2 questions or follow-up questions from departments. For the most part, they were accepted as proposed.
Patrick, when you say reallocation, what does that mean? Does it just mean like a position upgrade or?
Yeah, for example, if you look under Veteran Services, they had asked for one of their positions to be reallocated from a grant to the general fund, and that was denied.
So that reallocation for you is just reallocation of funding source?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And there was only one, right?
I believe so, yeah. For the most part, they're position upgrades or changes in the classification.
Is today the day to start asking questions about certain personnel requests, or is that better for another day?
I will do my best to answer. I've got a lot of notes, so I might have to get back to you if I don't have an immediate answer,
Okay.
but feel free.
So I'm just starting to look at this, so I may have more questions at a later date, but I guess the first one, just right at the top, it's in the packet under personnel requests, from your department,
Mhm.
communications specialist. Can you elaborate on that one? That's a new full-time position.
Sure. So we had in here, there are two positions from departments that are specific, that specifically included additional communications duties. One was from Public Health and the other was from the Water Resources Commissioner. So I have been trying to hold firm on the line of a centralized communications department whereby not every department has their own communications person, but it's centralized through administration. So that position was being requested as a result of the other two to say, let's keep this centralized. That person can serve as a resource. In fact, be embedded in the department to an extent to help supplant that need.
And Patrick, that's a second communication specialist after last year's.
Right,
So it wasn't like last year's wasn't filled. It was filled last year. Now we're gonna come back for another
right.
communication.
That is correct. And had the departments not asked for these positions, I wouldn't have proposed this as as an administrative position. In other words, this is being done in response to, instead of having two new positions, let's have one centralized position to support the departments.
So the position that we filled last year is sitting with administration, plus this one will also sit
I
with
believe
administration.
so. I'd have to go back and look at who that is, who was filled, but to my knowledge, there are no unfilled communication specialist positions.
Kate,
Right now.
Kate is, no,
Kate.
Kate was the new one.
Okay.
and it's,
Yes, that is filled.
August.
So Kate was from fiscal 26.
Yes.
How long have those two departments been asking for a communications specialist, and then what was their rationale for this desire from the county?
I believe in public health, and again, I'm going off of my limited knowledge, they had previously contracted and outsourced some of their communications duties. That contract is set to expire in September. There aren't plans to renew that contract, so this position had been asked for in prior years. It was denied last year. And in terms of the Water Resources Commissioner, I believe that was a new conversation this year, really relating to Joe's interest in putting more materials out. He's doing a individualized newsletter to each community. So that's a heavy lift that he's putting on his administrative staff right now. I feel that's a communication need that our department can help with.
I think that's a good place to put it with one of our goals is our strategic water plan, so.
Yes, along the lines of communication.
Thanks. I
Mhm.
might have follow-up conversations, but yeah, thank you.
The other ones on that,
I mean, I have a list of questions, but I can just email them to you. And then I assume we're gonna take up another meeting in a week or so, and
Yeah.
then maybe have some of the answers.
Happy to
the email
answer
questions.
those.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, this one's mine. So this is kind of a slide that just talks about our focus areas in this year's budget. Again, trying to tell the story of the budget where we're trying to address the areas of need. So 3 buckets, supporting our workforce in terms of budgetary allocations. There's the new positions we just talked about. The implementation of the wage study, which was a huge benefit, I think, in my mind to attraction and retention of good talent. The workspace enhancements that we're making in the facilities. People like coming to a nice office, nice space, so that's supports our workforce. We're also going to be working through continuing our safety and security upgrades, both from access control standpoint, all the digital readers that you're now getting used to using, there's a lot of additional opportunities to do that. And we also have, we're moving towards this era of more target hardening, where we're at the recommendation of studies, putting in ballistic glass in certain areas, and that's really a county-wide effort in the goal of protecting our employees. Organizational assessments, that's not something in the budget, but it is something I wanted you to be aware of. Today, actually, we're reviewing 3 proposals for an organizational assessment of the sheriff's department. The purpose of that is really to look at the structure that they have right now, the needs based on growth, and help provide a roadmap for future decisions for the sheriff's department. They're really excited about it. I'm excited about it. I think that's a model that we can continue to look at doing for departments in the future. And then continuing to invest in talent development through training and onboarding orientation efforts through HR. In terms of outward facing, investing in the community, we're continuing to maintain the high quality services that we provide. We, as we talked about, are renewing our investments in capital projects, which are to the benefit of our citizens and those we serve. And of course, maintaining the strong fund reserves, being good financial stewards of the money that we're entrusted with. And then new this year is the strategic plan. So as Karen mentioned, there's about $1.6 million invested in the budget towards strategic plan initiatives. We're going to be this fall kicking off with that county-wide task force, the Vision Summit for Growth. That will kind of set the tone for it. We're doing the space and study and planning, which really is to address the growth goal. How do we continue to make sure that the facilities and amenities we provide are in line with the growth that we're seeing? As you know, we're studying groundwater solutions with a grant from the state. We're working on finding ways to improve transparency and trust through more communications, more efforts to dashboard things. There's going to be technology involved in those, as well as David mentioned earlier, our efforts to upscale the meeting areas so we can continue to stream and provide meetings electronically. And then landscape standards, which was part of the water initiative as well. So those are just a few examples of what we're doing in the budget, but those are the 3 buckets that we're focused on.
Could you, go ahead, sorry. Was it?
It's you, Doug.
Yeah, if you could just spend some time on strategic planning fund.
Yeah.
You know, the idea behind that, see that there's some funding, you know, $1 million from the general fund, 100,000 from tipping fee, and then almost 100,000 from the insurance authority. Like, what is the goal of that? Right?
So of the 1.6 million, just to break it down, 500,000 of that is the groundwater recharge feasibility study, which is outside funding.
Right.
The facilities condition report and master plan, that's a $400,000 investment. The space needs assessment is a $400,000 investment. The environmental sustainability center feasibility study, which we're looking at using the new revenue from the solid waste ordinance to really start to determine what our needs are from a capital standpoint on the sustainability side. That's a $100,000 study. We've also got looking at developing a new landscape.
Where are you seeing these numbers, Patrick?
I'm just giving them to you. I can provide these to you.
Oh, okay, great.
Provided this with.
That was going to be one of
this
the
is the
email
break-
questions, but
Yeah, we're happy to do this. This is the.
I just see
breakdown
the 1.6 and then I see some expenditures. 1.6 are contracted services. So if you have the actual list of those
Yeah.
contracted services, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
we can get that to you. But that's just to give you an idea of like, it's a direct correlation between the strategic plan and what are the budgetary allocations needed to further that plan.
So what you're saying is instead of taking those out of general fund per se, you're going to put general fund money into the strategic planning fund and then spend out of the strategic planning fund.
Is that generally go?
Track it.
Yeah, in terms of tracking it. So.
Because Karen had mentioned the board initiatives fund, which is not, this is not necessarily going to be a board initiatives
Right.
fund. It's going to be a sub fund. And some of those things that you just read off, and I apologize, I didn't catch all of them, will come out of here as opposed to general fund per se.
So what I think, sorry if I was confusing. So it's on page 45 of 51 of your book, of the book.
Right,
If you
right,
Look
right.
on that. So it's called the Strategic Planning Fund.
Right,
It's a sub-fund of the general fund. And
Right.
what that really means is that it doesn't meet the qualifications to be a special revenue fund.
Right.
So we budget it like a special revenue fund, but then we roll it up in the general fund because what it really is a committed fund balance. It's a committed resources of the board. And so what I said was it would be handled very similarly to the.
right,
Board
I got that.
Initiative
It wasn't,
Fund.
this is not a board initiatives fund,
Right.
but it looks like the board initiatives fund.
But it's
in the
going
sense
to
that that's where it's
act
sitting.
and be very similar to
Right.
the Board Initiatives Fund. And so I think where the board will most likely see this is there will be projects, and what it will do is it will allow Patrick to tie funding directly to his reporting on the strategic plan. So it's progress, financial reporting without having to go all through, how you call me and say, Karen, where are we on the board initiatives? And Karen has to take 3 weeks to get back to you. No, I set this up so that there will be projects in here and it will be as simple as press a button and there it will be, right? So there will be projects right in this fund that we will be able to immediately give a report to the administration that will tell them exactly where each one of the initiatives is, because there's going to be a project attached to each assignment for each person's going to have when they're tracking what they're doing. So when you want to know how is what are one of the things? that you
Groundwater
did?
study.
Groundwater study going.
Yeah.
I'm going to know how the finance is going,
Mhm.
and then he can marry up the narrative with the money. And so
Mhm.
that was the intent,
Tracking.
to track it. So I'm not going over to water resources and facilities.
No, I totally get this. I mean, it makes a lot of sense that there's a fund dedicated to achieving an objective, right?
Yes,
And so we know, okay, if it's something to do with our strategic plan,
yes.
this is where we're gonna find money. Obviously, it's funded in part from general fund money, so. Thank you.
It's that excess fund balance. It was 800,000 of that excess fund balance I talked about earlier.
Right.
About half
Okay.
of it. Yep,
Great, thank you.
for that slide.
Okay, so in addition to, so as we look forward, we wanted to do a forecast of the general fund. This is something we haven't done in the past, and Patrick had talked about looking at going forward for 5 years into the future or so of your major funds. So this year we took a look at the general fund and we just started with where we were in I'm trying to get to my. Basic where we were in the 27 adopted, and then applied a wage study, and then tax growth equal to consistent. What we did was apply the COLA tax growth, paid off the bonds in the years that they went away, forecasted out pension, just regular forecasting. The COLA that we applied to wages was half of the tax growth. So the tax growth was 6%, the COLA was 3%. Pension fluctuated with CMH leaving. And so there was lots of assumptions going out. And then so what you have is you have the revenues is the light green, the dark green are expenses. And then you have that orange
Band.
band in the middle, and then you have your unassigned fund balance, which is where we want to target to have our unassigned fund balance. We want to stay in that band. And so that is ideally, we want to be within our fund balance policy. And so in that 20 to 25%. And the 2026 adopted, that shows that transfer out when the expenses are exceeding would show when we bring that excess fund balance. So this is making the assumption that we're bringing that excess fund balance forward, and the board is authorizing that transfer to fund the capital projects and the strategic planning. And then so that's why expenses are exceeding. And then it's bringing that fund balance, see the line, the unassigned fund balance drop back into the band. So then it's bringing it back in line, and then it's forwarding out. The revenues and expenses are staying in line. When we figured the excess fund balance initially, we had excess fund balance of 14.3 million because it is calculated at the end of every fiscal year. We actually are only recommending to reallocate 13.3 million because as expenses grow, you need additional money to stay, and so by the end of 26, we're going to need that extra money to keep within that 20 to 25%. So that's why we lowered the amount, because our expenses are growing. And so it allows us to stay within that band. We felt like this was a good exercise looking forward to make sure that we're still on the right track, especially with the CMH authority. And so this was just kind of to round out the whole process and make sure that everything was in line. And actually making that change I was very happy with the revenues and expenses, and I thought, oh, good, I'm done. And then I was like surprised about what happened to the unassigned fund balance. So kind of circle back around and
I like
changed up the original recommendation.
these forecasts. I think hopefully you do too. They're useful in kind of projecting what's coming, and they would also be useful, for example, Commissioner Jorsma, if we were to talk about what an impact or what a change to the levy might look like, and we can start to manipulate, what those do to fund balance reserves and where we fall on revenues and expenses. So we'll continue to incorporate these types of graphs, but looking is helpful. Especially if we know something big is coming and it's going to change our lines. But as Karen said, our goal is to stay in that band, and we're rectifying that this year if it's approved by the board to start the process and get the 401 set up, or the capital improvement fund set up for success. So next steps today is just receiving the information, again, to help kind of paint the narrative of what this year's budget looks like and what drove it. There are opportunities between now and August 25th for a work session or two, if you feel like that's necessary, to talk through some of these issues. Karen and I will continue to answer questions as you send them in, and I think it'd be good if I just responded to the whole board. So in case there's duplicative questions, then everyone has that same information. August 25th is the date that we would approve the the capital improvement plan, and we'd have a public hearing. Then on September 15th, the Finance Committee recommends the budget to the board, which would be adopted on September 22nd. So that's the budget calendar as it was approved. I think the question is, do we want to have work sessions, or if you want to think about that? But today, I think we are setting the public hearing with a vote.
Regina, do we have a hold then for the 11th for this, or is that something else?
But for a Parks Millage, if you need to revisit, if it didn't pass today for removal. That's your last day to vote on millage language for the November. Which date was that?
Deadline is August 12th, so I think that's the deadline.
So that's why we have an 11:30 meeting set aside for the 11th.
Could we kind of just use that as a catch-all for, in case we need to do that? Plus, we'll give you a whole week to answer our questions and then come back on Tuesday. I don't want to,
Saying like 1 o'clock, if we want to do a 1 o'clock meeting then.
well, it's held right
Sorry.
now for what,
Was that-
11:30? Is that right?
It's at 11:30 currently, after committees.
Yeah, I mean, we can maybe, whatever time committees get done,
Mm.
half an hour to committees.
It has to be 11:30 to the public hearing, if it's posted.
It would actually just be
This-
Work session,
Session.
just a work set, yeah.
Okay.
Because, yeah, you wouldn't be taking any action that day, so it'd just be a work session.
Unless there was action needed for the.
True. Yeah, maybe we better post.
Have it-
We'll post it as a special
Can we
meeting.
put it as a special meeting, then if we need to take votes, then we can start doing that as well.
Yeah,
So I think we post it for 11:30 and if changes, we can always,
if we have to cancel, if you want to cancel, yeah.
Okay.
That's
We also have a work session that looks like scheduled for August 14. Can you remind us what that's about?
14?
Yeah. August 14 at 9:30.
I think we put
I
them
don't
in
know.
there. I think we scheduled them. We talked about that, me and Jack. Didn't we schedule them?
Um,
And we had them there and we'll cancel them if they're not needed. So that's kind of where we are. I think they'll be for every month and we'll probably try to cancel them ahead of time. So it gives you a little heads up.
I'm pretty confused by what dates that we're actually committing to, what we're talking about when. You know, there was a little bit of confusion for today's meeting, so I would just really like to review either whether it's now or in an email so that I know what I'm coming and I'm prepared for it.
Sure. So the work sessions between August 5th and 12th are they're an option for this board. If you'd like to have a discussion on the budget itself. The other work session that you're referring to, I think, was predetermined as just a standing monthly work session as we've been doing as topics arise. It gives the opportunity to have a more informal discussion by the board about any number of topics. So that could be used.
Patrick, why was the 12th the end date?
It's related to the, getting the ad to the newspaper for the public hearing. We have to post by a certain date to advertise for the public hearing.
The 25th. So if we had to change something, Doug, we'd have to have it by that date, correct?
So, I mean, you could, I mean, yeah, we have to advertise.
No, I'm confused, actually. So does that mean that by the 12th, we have to have? Repeat why the 12th is the last date that we can do special.
Because we have to advertise, so we have to advertise the public hearing, so we have to hear your changes. We have to put together a whole package. We have to get it to the clerk. The clerk has to get it to the newspaper. The newspaper has to advertise. The advertisement has to be at least 6 days prior, but not more. Or I can't remember. There's a certain time frame that they have to meet. And so when we back it all up, and they wanted to do it on a regular meeting day. So the date was picked for the public hearing was the 25th, and we backed it up to that we would want to meet on the 12th, by the 12th.
So by the 12th, you're saying that we have to have something approved.
Well, you don't have to have it approved. You can still make changes. It's just what we're going to advertise for the public hearing.
What we're publishing in the.
What you're publishing as this is what the public is going to see as your first draft of the budget. That's what, so if you, I mean, you can still change it. You're not locked into it.
So
It's
that,
just-
I guess I'm confused. If we can change it and not locked in, why are we locking ourselves into the?
It's
12th?
what, I'm just saying that's what I'm going to advertise and what the public is going to see for the budget.
Because it's legally required, right?
It's legally required.
No, I get that it's legally required, Joe, but my question is why the 12th? I mean, like, it seems like we're tying our hands for no reason. I mean, like, you can literally publish today's draft
Sure. Yeah, if you want that to
and
be with the.
not hand tie ourselves to a 12th.
Sure. If that's what you want the public to see.
Not that I want or not want, but I'm just like, I don't understand why the 12th.
It builds in just maximum capacity to make changes so that what we're publishing is true and accurate to the board. Today, we're setting the date, but like the terms of the resolution, the millage amounts, all of that is what gets baked into what gets published. And we want to make sure that's accurate based on any further feedback after today.
If you had very large changes, I think you most likely like to be as close to where you were as possible.
Okay, so then what you're saying is when we meet on the 11th, then you're expecting finalish.
Doesn't have to be final. It's just.
Okay. All right.
But you just want it as close to the finished product as you can get at this point.
Well, I think part of it is we want to make sure there's no large changes, like we're not changing the millage rate
Well, yeah.
or things like that. Like we have a good target and adjustments, will be made as we go, but
Because you're having a public hearing that day and you
Right.
want to make sure the public hearing affords the public the opportunity to comment on the budget that's accurate.
No, I get that.
And the public hearing also includes the truth in taxation as well. So that it's going to advertise the millage rate. So that's.
Right.
I would hope that if you wanted to change the millage rate. you
I
would
don't
have
foresee
told
us
us
changing the
sooner.
millage rate. That's really not the question. I guess the question is, it seems as if what you're saying is after the 12th, you got what you got and you're not really making much changes.
And actually,
No.
no.
Okay, maybe I just have that wrong then. When I
You
see,
can change it after the public hearing. I mean,
right,
you
okay.
can change the budget after the public
Okay.
hearing, but.
it's just for trying to be as transparent as possible, right? Like here's our best understanding of where the millage rate will be, the overall numbers.
Exactly.
That sounds good.
Good.
Will the public just be hearing about the capital improvement plan the same time that we are voting to approve it? Or was this kind of like,
This,
There's no public hearing required for the capital improvement.
okay,
and yeah, this was the budget presentation to try to get the information out to the public on what's happening.
And then where are we left on the 14th then?
Just
The elephant
additional-
question.
Regina, remind me, did we have anything tentatively scheduled for August work session, non-budget work session as a topic yet?
Baker Park.
I had sent some recommendations into the chair, but I don't know if
Okay.
we're still gonna make that.
So I'll probably need to follow up with the chair and find out what the desire is, because I know there's a few things brewing right now in terms of topics, so, and with your feedback, we'll look at this. So I would
I've
say
already given my
that's,
feedback to the chair, so whether that gets
Okay.
on the agenda, I don't know, so.
okay,
Um,
so
so that looks
my
like 14th is
recommendation
good.
would be to keep that separate as a standalone work session for whatever topic is discussed and just determine if you want to have any budget-related work sessions between the 5th and the 12th.
I think we should have one on the 11th.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, with just getting most of this information today and some of our commissioners not being here, I think would be a wise move.
I agree.
So that 11th, at 11:30, that will be a special meeting. And votes can happen on the 11th.
Yep.
Okay, fair enough.
30-ish.
Sound good?
Sounds good. Move on to C. Vote in the public hearing? Okay. And we can wait for Jordan a minute, but we do have a majority here, so we don't have to wait for him. Set the public hearing. Suggested motion is to set a public hearing on the 2027 Ottawa County budget for Tuesday, August 25, 2026, to be held in the Ottawa County Boardroom 12220 Fillmore Street, West Out at 9 a.m.
So, support.
Just a point of order, and I'm not a parliamentarian, but we have minimum quorum with Jordan here. Does he need to be present to vote?
No, we're good.
We have 6.
We're good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's 6 here.
I know I counted them too a couple times.
All right. As long as we're good.
Right, there's a voice room. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Committee reports. Any committee reports?
Nope.
Second chance for public comment. Any public comment? Anybody online? Very good. Additional business. Report of the county administrator.
I have nothing to report today.
You said enough. Thank you. Perfect. Commissioner comments. Comments,
Sure, I'll start.
Moss.
Yeah, today's election day, so just a reminder for people to go out and vote. Also, I'd just like to compliment everybody on the work that was put into this. You can tell, obviously, it's been a lot of work. Also, I guess compliment to David. Grounds walking in looked really nice. Thank you.
Come on.
I'll just repeat.
Tito,
It was great.
you're doing good? No? Jim?
Just thanks for all the information here. This was laid out in a very understandable as can be format, and I appreciate all the work that went into it.
There's Elstra?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Good.
Appreciate that.
Yes, I'll echo what everybody else is saying. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you the way it's out, and thank you for all the work you did in it. So we are adjourned.
Thanks.